Hi loves, it's Lacey and welcome to our space. So today in our space we're going to be making a garden bench out of the Dollar Tree garden fences. I also have a piece of sign that I had left over from last year at Halloween. I already sanded off the glitter that was on the side and I cut the sides down just a little bit for a different project and I didn't end up using it, so we're going to use it for this project. I also am going to be utilizing a pretty scarf that came from Dollar Tree, and I also have some of the duster mop pads. We're going to be utilizing 2 of those. I also am going to be using some of the extra long barbecue skewers that they carry and a couple of other accessories and some florals. So first of all, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of these fencings. We have 3 altogether, and we're going to cut off the little stakes that go into the ground. Now I found out later that my actual wire cutters work a lot easier instead of scissors here, but as you can see, I'm using regular scissors to cut those off. And so that is what this one's going to look like. And then I'm going to cut off the top connectors on both sides of this garden fence. So one of them is going to have a point coming down, and I'm cutting that off with my wire cutters there. And then the other one's going to have like the little hook that you would put the point in, and I'm cutting it off of the top of both of these fences. Now I score it first with a like box cutter or like X-Acto knife thing, and then I use my wire cutters to get into that scored piece on this side and cut it right off. We have 3 of these all together, and we're going to do this on 2 of them, but on the second one we're going to cut off the 2 connectors on the bottom of that fence. Then once you get that done and you still have the connectors on the top of this fence, we're going to cut each one of these sections apart. And how I'm doing this is I took out my cutting mat so I didn't damage my table, and I'm scoring it with my box cutter, and then I'm going to use scissors to cut this part apart because it is a lot thinner than cutting off the sides and cutting off the stakes on the bottom. So I hope that makes sense. The first fence, you are going to cut off the stakes on the bottom, and then you're going to cut off the bottom connectors. And on the second fence, you're going to cut off the stakes on the bottom, and then you're going to cut off the bottom connectors and leave the ones on the top, as you can see on this one. And then you're going to cut the 4 sections apart. This is going to give you 4 separate pieces that you're going to put them, 2 of them together that were hooked together initially like this, and glue those together so the front and the back both look nice instead of having one side looking like the back and one side looking like the front. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to glue the 2 sections that were touching each other together, and I start off by hot gluing them with my high heat glue gun from Ryobi in the middle where the point is and around the edges, and I'm going to stick those together. Now make sure you use a side that does not have a connector on it to a side that does have a connector on it. I usually just put the 2 that were right next to each other together. I tried to fold them over and it didn't work as well. So you need to cut them completely apart and make the 2 sides stick together, making sure you put the nice sides facing out. Then I have these extra long barbecue skewers, as you can see. I'm going to be taking a couple out of here that I already had cut down for previous projects, used part of them, and they were long enough to work for this. If not, then you're going to need the longer ones. And we're going to hook our sides on. As you can see, when you put these on and hook them together, they only fit on one side, so you'll see which way they go. That makes those sides shorter than the actual top of the frame. And you're going to need a barbecue skewer, extra long, or a wooden dowel if you have real long wooden dowels, to fit in between on that back piece of fence. I used my miter shears, and if you haven't seen these before, they're from Amazon. They're really good cutters to cut down this kind of like dowel, but it is the extra long barbecue skewers from Dollar Tree. Most of the items I'm using here are from Dollar Tree. I actually marked and cut another one, but I'm not going to be using that one. I'm going to be using the longer one later on here. So you're going to take the first one that you measured out, and it's the length of the back, and you're going to glue it down to the fencing. And you're just going to hold, I'm holding mine there because I do have a high heat gun, so it takes a minute to dry. But you're just going to put that across the back. And then once that's done, you're going to glue up the sides nice and straight so they stay up and they don't fall down. And I'm just putting that in the crevice where they connect, and I'm going to glue them all the way up. They can touch the barbecue skewers on the side. And that way you have this little fencing that sits up by itself, and that's going to be the start of our bench. So once you get that all glued together, I'm going to lay it back down, and I'm going to take my sign that's already cut down to size. Luckily it fit here. If not, you can cut it down with a miter box, or I'd actually just score it over and over again with an X-Acto knife or a box cutter, and then they kind of snap real easy. But I'm going to set that up against that barbecue skewer or your dowel, whatever you use, and then I'm going to glue it to it and hold it up until it dries. If you're not using a high heat gun, it'll dry really, really quickly. Then I'm going to use one of the longer skewers, and I'm going to cut that down to make sure that it is just a little bit longer than the other one, and we're going to glue it to the front of the bottom of the bench. And so I'm turning this over in hopes that you can see the first one's glued to the back of the bench, and then we put down the sign to be the seat, and now you're going to go in about a half an inch to an inch with the next one and glue it down. So here I turned it over so you can see it. It's not right up against the edge. Now it's flipped back over again. It's not right up against the edge, and the front is facing down. So we're going to take our third fence piece, and I'm going to use my miter shears. You can use any strong scissors, and I'm going to cut it all the way across, all the way up to the little swirls that are at the top of the fence. We're going to be using the top portion of this fence. Now it's a little long still here, so I cut off even more of it, and you can tell it's all the way up to the little swirls. And we're going to put that up against the front piece of barbecue skewer or wooden dowel, whatever you use. I just am using mostly Dollar Tree products for this. And so we're going to run a bead of glue across there. It doesn't need to be across the whole thing, but this was just the easiest way to do it, and you won't see it once the project is done. And we're going to glue that piece of fencing up against not only the seat portion, but up against that dowel portion that we put on, so it could be nice and secure. And I'm just holding it up there until it dries and adding a few extra dots of hot glue to make sure that it stays into place. So once this is all complete like that, you'll see it's one piece, and it's a bench, and it's decorative underneath and decorative up the back and on the sides. And so now I am actually gluing the seat portion, the sign portion, to the sides to make sure that it all stays. And this is what it looks like. It is laying down, of course, so you can see it really, really well. And if you notice on the front portion, it will be cut open. So I'm using some actual wooden dowels that I had in my stash. They're about a ½ inch thick. Dollar Tree sells wooden dowels, but they're not thick enough to cover that space because it's cut open and it didn't look nice to me. So I'm covering it up with a wooden dowel. You can see that the glue goes down in that section. And in a minute, I will show you the other one. And what I did is I put a dab of hot glue on the end of the dowel, and then I set it on top of there to make this look a whole lot nicer, a whole lot more decorative of a piece. And so you could use the Dollar Tree ones, but you would need more than one dowel to make it fat enough to cover up that section. So I'm just using some I already had in my stash, and I just cut them both to size. Now, you can do that with a miter saw. I did it on my big compound miter saw, but they have a miter box that you can get to cut that, or I don't know if scissors would cut through it because I didn't try. So now I have two just little wooden beads that fit on the end of here, and I'm just going to simply glue them down to the top to kind of complete the look. I also take some beaded garland and take the beads off and put it down in the holes, but I think I lost that footage. Now I'm going to take it outside and spray paint it that 2 times the paint and primer in white by Rust-Oleum. And while that is drying, I'm going to take our 2 little mop pads and glue them together. I'm just putting some glue against the actual part that would stick to your mop, and then gluing the 2 together to make it long enough to go across the bench. And then we're going to take our scarf. This is a really pretty floral print. It's kind of busy, but I don't mind it. It is spring going into summer, so I think it would be really nice to have a floral bench for it, or seat for the bench. So I'm just going to gather it in the back and hot glue it down. I'm going to make the edges really tuck in, and here it is on our white bench. Now I'm going to take some florals. These actually came from Joann's. I just had them extra, and I'm trying to use up a lot of stuff that's in my stash. And I'm going to cut them apart and then start gluing the pieces along the bottom on the edge. I'm doing this because you can see in some spots where the cut part was not all that pretty. So I'm adding to the bench just for decoration and to cover up those spots. And you will see also that I put the little beads inside the big beads, like the beaded garland part in there. They were already white, and so I didn't have to repaint those. Now you can decorate this any kind of way you want. You can use Dollar Tree florals completely. I just had these, and so that's why I used these. And the little flower that's sitting up on the bench, that is from Dollar Tree. I tried to find colors that would match the colors that are in the bench. And here is what it looks like all done. I think it turned out really, really cute. One of my subscribers, actually a couple of my subscribers, asked me could I make a chair out of the fence pieces, and I thought, hey, I can make a whole bench because I have enough of them. I guess it is going around that people are using these for all kinds of interesting things. I think this turned out really, really cute. I will tell you that spray painting it white was my choice. I think black or a dark gray or a brown would do better for this, because when the edges don't meet up perfectly, you can see in between them, like on the sides. You wouldn't notice that if it was a darker color, but I think white works perfectly for spring and summer. And the little red roses that are on here are from Dollar Tree. They had them back early spring. The little orangey ones came from Hobby Lobby off of something that I already had in my stash. And of course, it wouldn't be a Lacee Space DIY if it didn't have a butterfly on it lately. So what those are the die cut butterflies from Dollar Tree. Sorry, it was an afterthought to put it on there. I took 2 of them and backed them on each other that matched. Bit it in half, and I put some gold floral wire in to make that antennae and just curled the ends. If you're an oldie but goodie, you've seen it a million times before. If you're new to my channel, this is how I do it. And I added these cute little gnomes up there just for decoration. I asked them how they liked my bench, and they said it was a little too big for them because their feet don't touch the ground, but they don't have any feet, so I don't know what they're complaining about. I like how it turned out. Also, you don't need to have the cushion on there. Without the cushion, it looks just as nice, and you could use it to stack books on, or candles, or even to put some real life plants. You can decorate this any kind of way you want. So that is it for this video, and I will catch you guys in my next one. Make sure you smash that subscribe button so you can see what I'm going to bring to you next. And I'll talk to you later. Bye, loves.